Okay, I'm just going to come out and just say it. Luis Ortiz isn't that good. He's not as good as what Wilder fans try and make out. He isn't as good as Wilder has tried to make out. Wilder's actually claimed that this guy is the second best fighter in the division after himself. Obviously said that after he beaten him to add a little bit of more credibility to the fact that he's the only decent fighter that he's got on his resume. Now, I'm not saying Ortiz is trash. Technically, he's one of the best within the division. I'm not going to argue against that. He's very sound. He's got excellent fundamentals. He's got good instincts. But he's now old. He's at the latter end of his career. The stamina isn't quite there, which means that he is nowhere near one of the elite fighters within the division who should be getting a shot at the title within the next 2 or 3 fights. Last week, he beat some Romanian guy who was ranked 100 odd, he looks like more of a sparring partner. I know he's a sparring partner of Joseph Parker. He doesn't have that many fights with him. Like I said, he's ranked in the hundreds. He breezed through him as he should do. And suddenly he's demanding a title fight, a shot at a rematch at Wilder, or um, a shot at Joshua. Now, the shot at Joshua doesn't necessarily surprise me because everybody's shooting at Joshua now because why not? He already got $500,000 for fighting Wilder. So maybe he fancies making a couple more million against Joshua. Now you get a lot of Wildettes jumping on the bandwagon, basically saying, "Oh, Joshua ducked Ortiz, and he has to fight Ortiz first to prove himself." Well, firstly, he didn't duck Ortiz. Joshua had to get the IBF mandatory out of the way because he won the IBF belt first, obviously against Charles Martin. Everybody knows that the IBF, they don't mess around. Once they've ordered you to schedule the fight and to make the fight and to tell you who you're fighting, you either make it or you get stripped. There's no two ways about it, which is good. I wish the other sanctioned bodies were as strict as them and as consistent as them. So he had to fight Pulev or face being stripped. Obviously, he's just won the belt. He wants to go on and become undisputed, so he can't afford to have done all that work only to just essentially throw away that belt. Now, Ortiz did not want to wait to fight for that fight between Joshua and Pulev. He was itching to go now, and for me personally, that's because he knows that he's in his 40s now and he can't maybe hang around for another 6 months to a year. You know, these elite heavyweight fighters probably fight twice a year tops. The top end guys, you know, Joshua, Wilder, White, Parker, they're only going to fight a couple times a year. So Ortiz effectively being told that he's behind Pulev in terms of getting his shot at Joshua. He knows that's going to be another 6 months to a year, depending on Joshua's schedule. So what did he do? He opted to fight Wilder. Fine. Maybe he's thinking if I beat Wilder, then I then have something to bring to the table in terms of coming up against Joshua, and then that can bump up my earnings. And then obviously, if I beat Joshua, I'm also undisputed as well. So it's a double bonus. But what happened is he failed a drug test yet again, and he was removed from the WBA rankings, and therefore he was no longer a mandatory for Joshua. Now Joshua has fought all his mandatories to date, all of them. He's not taken on any voluntary defenses. He's fought everybody he's been ordered to fight because he wants to remain on task to being undisputed. Wilder hasn't done that. I think he's fought one mandatory in the 3 years since he's been holding that belt. One. He's been giving away mandatories to guys who are not even ranked in the top 10. I think they're around 12th, 11th, or 15th, or something along those lines. But they're certainly not been in the top 5, bar the only one that he was forced to fight. And Stavern was one of them as well. So, I mean, that's ridiculous. Someone who's been out for next to 2 years and suddenly he's getting a title shot. But that clears up the whole Joshua ducking Ortiz, because that's not the case. In my opinion, if Joshua was to face Ortiz in the next 6 months to a year, he'll actually walk through him. I think he is far too athletic, much too young, too tall, too strong, and he'll make an easier job of it than Wilder did. Why? Because Joshua's a better boxer. And he'll figure out Ortiz a lot quicker than it took for Wilder to figure out Ortiz. But that's Wilder's tactics. His tactic is, I'm just going to get out of box and set on my right hand, and that should see me through. And yeah, in 39 fights, that's worked for him. When he comes against a top tier fighter, that probably won't do that, because they're gonna do their homework, and they're gonna make sure that they don't put him in a position where he's able to set up that right. But till now, no one has. So it's, I can understand why he'll think, well, if it's not broken, why try and fix it? But back to Ortiz, he's not as good as you think he is. His resume isn't that great. If you look back at it, I mentioned a remaining 9-8 in his last fight. What is that? That's a tune-up fight. That's not a fight that you beat and then you start shouting out, taking shots at the champions. Especially since you lost your fight and your chance the fight beforehand. You should drop down the peckings, rebuild, and give somebody else a chance. Just beating a guy ranked 130 odd after being out for 4 to 5 months, and then beating him, within 2 rounds, that doesn't give you an opportunity at the Kings. That's ridiculous, and he should be nowhere near a title fight, not for another year or so. But the reason why he's desperate is because he knows how long can he keep doing this for? He's in his 40s. He can't wait indefinitely. Prior to Kojanu, obviously he fought Wilder and got knocked out. He had Daniel Martez, or Martz, sorry. I believe Parker beat him a little while back. Then it was Dave Allen. Dave Allen is a British fighter. For those who don't know who he is, I don't quite know how to describe Dave Allen, but he's more of a, how can I say, he's more of like a lovable rogue where everybody wishes him well, but he knows and they know that he's not of world champions level. He's not. He's sort of like how maybe the British sort of endear to sort of David Price. We want him to do well, but we also know that he's very limited, and he's probably at the pinnacle of where he's going to be in his career. I mean, Dave Allen was one fight away from essentially walking away from boxing. If he didn't win his last fight on the White and Parker card, which he won, I think, in the 4th round, with, he was getting battered, but he managed to pull off a Hail Mary and get the KO. Had he not won that and he had lost, I think he was talking about sort of packing it in. So that sort of tells you the levels that Ortiz was fighting. And that was the fight, I believe, that Hearn had him on. I think it was a 2-match deal with Matchroom, and he stunk the place out. He didn't look impressive. He made very hard work of Dave Allen, and I think Dave Allen wasn't even 10 fights into his career, so he's still essentially a prospect thrown into the deep end, because he's that type of guy. If you said to him, oh, would you fight X? He probably wouldn't hesitate. He'll just do it. If you told him now, would you fight Wilder or you'll fight Joshua? He isn't going to say no. He's not going to think about, well, what's the chances of me getting knocked out? Am I going to lose? Am I on that level? Is that going to affect me long term? He'll probably just say how much and when. And that's the type of fighter that he is. But, Ortiz stunk out the place. Now, you get a lot of these Wildettes also saying, oh, well, Hearn brought him over to Matchroom to effectively stop him from facing Joshua. Well, actually, you'd actually think it'll be the opposite. Because if he brought him over to Matchroom, A, to get a closer look at him, and B, that means that the fight is even easier to make. Why? Because Hearn will be negotiating with himself, essentially, if he is a promoter for both the fighters, and that's a fight that wants to be made. But the reason why Ortiz and Joshua doesn't really appeal to myself, and probably to Joshua and the British public, is he's not a household name. And the issue is also, he doesn't speak English. In England, we don't have a Cuban community here, let alone a big Spanish-speaking community. So how would he come over here and build this fight? It just wouldn't work. In America, it can work because there's a lot of Spanish speakers in America. It's probably into the tens of millions. In the UK, there isn't. It's just the appeal isn't there. Yes, it will sell out because it's Joshua, but the atmosphere probably wouldn't be as good as it could be. The pay-per-views will probably be well low in comparison to all these other fights, and it'll be a bit of a lull when when Joshua's trying to build up a head of steam to try and become undisputed. Just to throw in a Luis Ortiz fight in the middle of that voluntarily, for me that doesn't make sense. Um, it just doesn't. So Wilder needed that more than Joshua, because Wilder needed someone to say, yeah, he's semi decent and I beat him, which is why he's sort of hyping him up by basically saying he's the second best heavyweight in the division when he's not. Even before they fought, he was questioning how old Ortiz was. You know, saying he was an old man and he could be of any age, just not the one that he's essentially being reported as. So everyone is aware of that. It's just they can't prove or disprove it at this moment in time. I guess one day history will show, and it will come out exactly how old he is, and we'll know that he was in his 40s. But to sort of sum it up, Ortiz, he isn't as good as what you make out to be. Thrown into Joshua, he will just be food for him. Again, he'll just be too strong, too tall. That Parker fight has shown me that Joshua can fight on the end of a jab. You know, can keep someone right there in front of him. It's not exciting, but they're going to find it very difficult to close the distance, and he will just jab them to death. And I think again, his age and his strength will just mean he'll just walk through Ortiz. And Ortiz is rugged. Don't get me wrong; he could probably take a couple of bombs, but you got 12 rounds of that, and his stamina isn't the best. It's certainly a lot worse than Joshua's. And Joshua's stamina has improved over the last sort of 3 or 4 fights to the point where it's not really even been an issue. Um, I just don't think Ortiz will be able to deal with someone as strong. I also forgot to add that there's some fools out there who are comparing um, Ortiz victory, sorry, Wilder's victory over Ortiz with Joshua's over Klitschko, almost saying that the Ortiz win eclipses that. And this is where my mind is blown. You're comparing Luis Ortiz, who hasn't even won a fucking tin cup, compared to an Olympic medalist and a champion who damn near reigned with an iron fist for a decade with him and his brother, with over 60 odd fights, a high percentage knockout, losing to a handful of guys, and you're belittling what Joshua did. Remembering Joshua was still a prospect, damn near, when he took that fight on. All of you LDBC bitches were saying, oh, Hearn's never going to put his cash cow or that young pup in front of Klitschko, and Klitschko's going to walk through him and all that shit, and it's not going to happen. He's not going to risk him. He's going to wrap him up in cotton wool and all that. No. Joshua went for it. Fortune favors the brave. And Wilder isn't brave. 33 fights into his career, after he clinched a belt that was freed up from Vitali retiring, that Stevan beat Ariola to become WBC champion. Suddenly, Joshua becomes brave and he wants to grab one of those belts. Fine. That's what he should have been doing. He should have done that 10, 12 fights earlier. But his handler in Finkel said, nah, this guy's a baby. We don't want to put him with Klitschko now. We want to wait on that. You know why? Because they knew Klitschko was coming to the end and they didn't want that fight to happen. You're talking about legacy. Wilder talks about legacy. He should have took that fight as soon as he grabbed that belt. Yes, have 1 or 2 fights in between. You want to defend it first. You want to get a nice feel for it. You want to bring that back home. You want to have a fight in Alabama and you want to show it off and you want to blow away someone and retain that belt. Yeah, 1 fight I'll give you. 2 tops. But then you got to go for Klitschko. Joshua didn't. Sorry, Joshua did and he didn't. And that's the reason why Joshua is a star and a commercial cash cow. And people around the world want to watch him because that young buck stepped up while your 33-year-old ass or 33 fight ass didn't want to go for it. And you make all the excuses in the world. All I ever hear from Wildettes is, oh, should have, could have, will do, wanted to. It's never he did. It's never, oh, he did fight Klitschko. He did fight Vlad. He did fight Vitali. He did fight White. He did fight Povetkin. He did fight Brazil. He did fight AJ. He did fight Fury when Fury was healthy. You never hear that. It's always, oh, he wanted to. He would have liked to. He's trying to. Fuck that. Wilder is a great talker. A fantastic talker. He's very charismatic, you know. But he reminds me of Rick Ross. When you ask Rick Ross a question, look back at any video you ask Rick Ross, especially the questions when they asked Rick Ross about when he was a correction officer and whatnot. He never answers the questions. All he does is starts chatting shit about something else and starts talking in rhymes and riddles. And the person who is asking these questions should fucking take a hold of him and say, just answer yes or no simply, or be direct, or keep them on task. But instead, they get lured into the fucking fantasy that is of Wilder in terms of the things that he has to say. No one's scared of him.